Sol 46. 2 pair. Kings high. Mark said, laying down his hand with a flourish. That's real cute, but they don't stack up against my full house. Beth grinned as she spread her cards on the table. God damn it, he exclaimed, as he lost his fifth hand in a row. He really thought he had her that time too. So that's another $20,000 to little ol' me, Beth said, tapping at the tablet sitting between them to transfer the imaginary funds into her bank. Her latest win meant that she was now up over $2 million Martian dollars. They were still working on figuring out the Mars to Earth money exchange rate. Once they realized there was a lot of card games in their future, she had taken the time to throw together a program that would help them keep track of their bets and winnings. Some days Mark wanted to throw the tablet out of the airlock. But Beth ever so kindly reminded him that it wouldn't help since the program was backed up the Habs' main computers. "You're cheating," he accused. "You have to be. You're stacking the deck." "How?" "You're the one dealing," she pointed out with a laugh. "Now quit your bitching and deal again. Mama needs a new pair of space shoes." Mark grumbled to himself as he gathered up the cards, knowing she was a monster of his own creation. 2 weeks ago she didn't know a flush from a straight before he got to her. She had a disturbingly steep learning curve. "We're going to Vegas the second we get home," he informed her. "We'll have to be careful at the blackjack tables though, so you don't get us kicked out for cheating, you card shark." "I don't cheat," she said, playfully throwing a card he missed at him to shuffle into the deck. "You count cards," Mark retorted. "That's what they call cheating." "But that's not my fault, it's an accident," she insisted. "I can't help it." "How do you accidentally count cards?" he laughed disbelievingly, as he shuffled. "It's just," she sighed as she tried to think of a way to explain it. "I see the cards and I know the odds already, the math just happens in my head. I can't stop it any more than you can stop reading a sign you see on the wall. It's just instinctual." Mark set the stack of cards to the side before propping his elbows on the table and setting his chin on his interlaced fingers. "So tell me, what's it like living in the head of Beth Johansson, math wizard? Because now I'm imagining it's like the movie Rain Man." Beth rolled her eyes. "I never saw that movie," she informed him primly, even though she understood the reference. "Really?" Mark asked. "It's a classic. I don't like Tom Cruise. You know he only has one front tooth," she said, pointing to her own incisor as if that answered everything. "Seriously, if I had access to Google right now I would show you." Mark inhaled sharply, clearly about to ask for more information, then seemed to reconsider and simply shook his head, letting it go. "Wanna play something else for a while? I'm tired of losing the metaphorical shirt off my back." She laughed unrepentantly. "We could play Egyptian rat screw again." Mark unconsciously rubbed the back of his hand. "You slap so hard. There is so much pent-up rage in your tiny little body. I mean, the fire in your eyes when you go in for the sandwich is terrifying. Did the psychivals pick up on that at all?" "Don't be a baby about it," she tsked, rolling her eyes. "And it's not rage, it's just a perfectly healthy competitive streak." "No, but you slap so hard," he felt the need to repeat. Beth stuck her tongue out at him. "I play to win," she shrugged. "I mean, I've always known you're super tough because you're no astronaut." Training had been anything but easy, and definitely quickly weeded out the weak of mind and body. "But you might need to look into another outlet for that." "I'll take that under advisement," Beth replied sarcastically, shaking her head. "What are your feelings about roller derby?" he asked after taking a couple minutes to think about it. "Roller derby," she repeated, her eyebrows shooting up towards her hairline. "Yeah, I bet you'd be awesome at it," he said enthusiastically. "You'd need a really good derby name. With some kind of space pun or twist. You could be the Mars Attacker." "Oh my god." Beth couldn't believe they were actually having this conversation. "Vomit Comet," he offered. "You know. Ace of Space." "Lame." "Lizzie Stardust." "Literally no one calls me Liz." "Sonic Boom." "Afterburn." "Astroblaster," he suggested in rapid succession. "Meh." "Reactor Hardcore Tech." "Kinda a mouthful." He snapped his fingers. "I got it." "Sastronaut." She shook her head. "No, that would be your name," if you decided to take up roller derby. What about astronauty? Mark offered, looking exceedingly proud of that last one. Oh, and now we're done, Beth announced, even though she was trying and failing not to laugh. You are a ridiculous man and I don't know why I put up with you. Because I'm the only other person around for millions of miles, he offered shamelessly. Ah yes, that's right, she said, trying to smother her grin. Besides, if I was going to be a roller girl, my name would obviously be either Hot Piece of Astronaut or Fatal Error, 404 not found. Mark laughed so hard he almost fell out of his chair. Once he got himself back under control and wiped the tears of mirth out of his eyes, he picked the deck of cards back up and gave it another shuffle. Still chuckling to herself, Beth slumped down in her chair and lifted her legs so her socked feet were propped up on his knee where he sat across the table from her. Do you know how to play whist? He asked, shifting his leg slightly so her heel wasn't digging into his thigh, but didn't stop her from using him as a footrest. It's usually a 4-person game, but there's a 2-person variant. Beth's nose scrunched up as she thought. Isn't that a grandma game? She asked. Like something you play with other retirees while drinking Arnold Palmer's in Boca. I'll have you know it was actually great-grandpa Watney that taught me how to play, and he lived in Key West, not Boca, Mark retorted. I stand corrected, she said once she stopped laughing enough to answer. But no, I don't know how to play whist. However, I'd love to learn. Why don't I believe you? Mark said, watching her closely as he continued to shuffle absently. I am offended that you would doubt my sincerity, she replied loftily. I'm sure you are, he grinned, running his thumbnail down the arch of her food. When she didn't so much as twitch, he shook his head disbelievingly. I can't believe you're not ticklish at all. Nope, she said, popping the pea. Sorry. She wasn't sorry at all. It's not natural. Are you sure you don't have neurological damage or something? Hey. She lifted one foot to kick him lightly on the knee. I'm not damaged, I'm just not ticklish. And if it makes you feel better, I used to be really ticklish, but I stopped. How do you just stop being ticklish? He asked dubiously. I have 4 uncles, and they are the type of people who thought it was funny to tickle me and all my cousins until someone either peed their pants or cried, Beth explained. But I realized that if you didn't react they would get bored and leave you alone. So I got really good at pretending I wasn't ticklish, until one day when I was probably about 8 or 9 I actually stopped being ticklish. Mark just sort of looked at her with wide eyes, like he was trying to decide what he thought of her story. You stubborned the ticklishness out of yourself. Even he wasn't sure if it was a statement or a question. She shrugged lightly. I always considered it the power of mind over matter. Even at 8 years old, you were so strong-willed you decided you didn't want to be ticklish anymore, so then you just weren't. Basically, yeah, I guess, she confirmed. She'd never really dwelled on it that much. Is that weird? Mark laughed so hard that he dislodged her feet from his lap. Yes, that's weird, he exclaimed through his laughter. But it's also the most quintessentially Beth Johansson thing I have ever heard. I'm so glad I amuse you, she said dryly, even as she made no attempt to hide her smile. Now are you going to teach me this grandma game or what? All right, let me teach you another game to kick my ass at, he grinned self-deprecatingly. You'll like this one, there's more strategy to it than you would think. It took a couple go-arounds before Beth really got the hang out of it, but it wasn't long before she figured which tricks she wanted to go for and which she wanted pass on. They were so involved in their game that Mark was actually surprised when he noticed how much time had passed. I think I'm going to get ready for bed, he said, stretching his arms above his head, working out some of the kinks that had formed from sitting in a chair for so long. Wait, before you do that I want to go outside, Beth announced, climbing to her feet and heading towards their Eva suits. What? Why? He asked, his brow furrowing in confusion, even as he followed behind her. They hadn't been outside at night since Sol 16. There just hadn't been any reason to be. I just want to see something, she replied vaguely, as she began the process of suiting up. What's that? Trust me, she asked in return. Of course, he said without hesitation. He was still curious, but would let it go for the moment, as he too began to suit up without further explanation. 20 minutes later they were stepping out of the airlock and into the dark Martian night. Do I get to know why we're out here yet? He questioned once they were outside. Wait. she replied absently as she scanned the sky. Following her line of sight, he assumed she was looking for their old friend the MRO, and began to scan the night sky as well. It didn't take long before some movement from the corner of his eye captured his attention. There he gestured to it as realization hit him. The MRO traveled from south to north. The blinking light his eyes were currently tracking was moving east to west. "That's not the MRO, he said barely above a whisper. "No, it's not," Beth confirmed just as softly. "Keep looking." It was only a matter of minutes before there was yet another satellite streaking across the sky. And a few minutes after that another and another. "Do you know what this means?" Mark asked, even though he knew she did. "It means they know," she said, a smile lighting up her face. "NASA knows we're alive." "Your MRO hack worked," he said, his voice filled with a small amount of wonder as he continued searching the sky for satellites that just seemed to keep coming. "Why didn't we do this before?" It was a question to himself as much as it was to Beth. "It only occurred to me a couple of days ago that we should," she admitted. It was a little embarrassing how long it took her to realize that there was such a simple way to confirm that their message to NASA had gotten through. "But I was feeling optimistic, so I thought I would save it for tonight." "Why tonight?" he asked, confused, not sure why this particular night was any different from the past 40 that they'd been alone on Mars. Beth turned to look at Mark, slipping her gloved hand into his. "Because even on Mars, I thought we deserved some Christmas lights." A small gasp escaped his throat before he could stop it. "Is it really Christmas?" He had long since stopped keeping track of the days as they corresponded with Earth. She nodded. "It sure is. Best Christmas present ever." He squeezed her hand gently. "Thank you." She squeezed his hand back. "I didn't do anything." He felt more than saw the delicate shrug of her shoulders. But what she said wasn't true. She gave him the best present there was, and she gave it to him in small ways every day. Hope. They stood there for a long time. Two astronauts, hand in hand, a long, long way from home. Silently watching lights streak across the sky, their only connection to the world they'd left behind. It wasn't until Mark's neck started to ache from looking up that he made any motion to stop. "Come on," he said, giving Beth a gentle tug so she would follow. "I have an idea." Building 1, Johnson Space Center. Houston, Texas. Venkat sat in his office poring over the never-ending paperwork that seemed to just materialize on his desk each day. Shift schedules, fund allocations, project juggling, out-and-out looting of other projects. He'd never pulled so many stunts in his life. And it just never seemed to end. He could have taken the day off, no one would have blamed him, but he didn't feel much like celebrating, and besides he was only half Christian after all. Instead he was taking advantage of the holiday quiet to try to catch up, figuring there would be no one to interrupt him on Christmas. Which is why he couldn't hold back the sigh when he heard a knock on his door. Looking up he was surprised to see Mindy standing on the other side of the glass waving at him. Perplexed, he quickly gestured her to come inside. "What are you doing here?" he asked. "I thought you were going home for the holidays." "Yeah, I was, but then with the blizzard and all they grounded all the flights, there was no way to get there, so I stayed here. Figured since I wasn't doing anything today, I might as well come in for a couple hours." She shrugged as she crossed into the room and sat down in the visitor's chair across his desk. "There was a blizzard?" Mindy laughed lightly. "Yeah, the entire eastern seaboard is effectively shut down right now," she told him. "You really need to watch some not space-related news." "Who has time for that these days?" Venkat sighed, slumping back in his chair. "Are you even aware that it's Christmas today?" she asked teasingly. "Or were you just wondering where everyone is?" "Well, there was a memo about it," he replied, taking her ribbing with good humor. "Yeah, I got that email too." Mindy smirked. "So you didn't say, what are you doing here?" he asked, meaning his office. "I didn't know if you'd be in today, but I thought I'd take a chance." She shrugged. "I have a Christmas present for you." "What?" he asked, taken aback. "But you didn't." "I didn't," she quickly corrected, seeing where his train of thought went. "Watney and Johansson did. Actually, I think Miss Montrose is going to enjoy it the most, but here you go." Venkat took the tablet that Mindy was extending across the desk and looked down at the picture that was displayed. It was a familiar one, of the Ars 3 site, but it only took him a moment to spot what she was talking about. Where for the past month it used to say not dead, it now said Merry Christmas. Venkat looked up at Mindy with wide eyes. When did they do this? Mindy shrugged. It was done when I came in, they had to have done it sometime last night, she explained. They were out of the hab at night. It was a rhetorical question, but that didn't stop her from answering anyways. I think they might have been looking for satellites, maybe I'm just biased, but it was the only reason I could think of for why they'd be outside at night, she proposed. They'd have seen all the lights, they'd know we altered their trajectories. Which means they know we're watching them. Which is why they finally changed the message. No, that makes perfect sense. Venkat felt the first genuine smile he'd had in a long time cross his face. This is an excellent Christmas present. Did you already email this to Annie? He asked. Sure did, she confirmed. All the usual parties already have it in their inbox. Efficient as always, he praised. I'm gonna call her and make sure she checks her email today. She's going to want to make sure this hits the press before the nightly news. He picked up the phone on his desk and quickly hit the speed dial for the Director of Media Relations. Hey Annie, is Venk, have you checked your work email in the last 20 minutes? He rolled his eyes in Mindy's direction as he waited for Annie to stop talking on the other end of the line. Yeah, Merry Christmas to you too. I wouldn't have interrupted your holiday if it wasn't important. Watney and Johansson sent you a Christmas present from Mars, so I think you should check your email and open it. Yes, I'll wait. He tapped his fingers in rhythm on his desk while he waited for Annie to find the image on her phone, Mindy still sitting across from him looking bemused. Yes, I figured you would, he smirked when Annie came back on the line. That's why I called you. Miss Park said she believes that they might realize that we're watching them now, so we might be getting more messages from them in future. Yeah, Merry fucking Christmas to you too. I'll see you when you get back in town. He hung up the phone and grinned at the young satellite tech across from him. I haven't heard Annie that happy about something in weeks, Venkat told her. That's the real Christmas miracle, she smirked. You're not wrong. He paused for a moment and then spoke again. Have you had lunch yet? No. Mindy answered, not expecting that question. Do you like Chinese? It's a total cliché, but there's a place down the street that's pretty good, and it should be open today. When Mindy didn't answer right away, he continued. It's Christmas, we deserve a half day off. And if Watney and Johansson were up all night, they'll probably stay inside today. Mindy smiled. Yeah, okay. Let me just swing back through SatCon so I can get my stuff.